where I was going with that, and and I think last time we spoke, you may have said you liked the direction that Axl was going with Civil War, and I would look at it
absolutely
like a category of he's got Civil War, he's got Estranged, he's got It's So Easy, he's got One in a Million, and it's not the same lyrics. I love AC/DC, but it's all the same. You know, you go there for one mood. Here, I found a place where I can get all of it and said in such an intelligent manner that didn't speak to me before. And there was something about that just made me feel cool. Liking Guns N' Roses made me feel cool. And it still, I guess, does. I feel silly saying that, but it wasn't, you know.
No, you shouldn't feel silly saying it, because that wasn't all accidental. I mean, there was a lot of thought that went into what made Guns N' Roses Guns N' Roses. And I don't think it goes without notice that it was the video for Welcome to the Jungle that started the blue touch paper to the firework fizzing really hard. And quite deliberately, that video was a steal of 3 movies. Midnight Cowboy. You know, that's the ingenue coming to the big city, and we were talking about living in, you know, how it can be tough some days to deal with city living. And here's the ingenue with the stem of grass in his mouth to denote, yeah, he's come from rural hick Lafayette or wherever, but he's coming to the city to chase his dreams. Then you have the steal from the man who fell to earth. And in that particular movie, it's when the alien is so perplexed by human behavior, he isolates himself in a rundown motel with all these stacks of TVs, watching them all simultaneously to figure out what the hell is going on in this place.
Right.
And then you have the steal from Clockwork Orange, where you're forced to watch one screen and it is driving you fucking crazy with what's going on. And we intersperse that with actual news footage that we see on a daily basis. I mean, I got a phone call out of London yesterday from a company called ITN, which is a major TV producer in the United Kingdom, and they want to come over and set up cameras and talk and so on and so forth. And I found myself talking to the producer and saying, you know, it's interesting watching news feed from the Sky Channel right now. In some ways, I think I'm watching Welcome to the Jungle perpetually every day. And, you know, I think that video told people, yeah, this is a band with an attitude, but it's also a band with an intelligence, because obviously all this was built on Axl's lyric. And within that lyric was an acerbic, insightful viewpoint. So, you know, that meant that we could make a video that actually had a social commentary that showed intelligence, that we didn't just have big booby girls running around in it to, you know, for eye candy to catch people, you know, males to watch the latest rock and roll song. I think there was a clear indicator from the get-go of, yeah, we might have a fucking attitude, but we've also got a fucking point of view, mate. You know, and I think that came across, and I think that was part of what inspired the most amazing reaction that the band got in 1988.
And that's what I took pride in having them be my favorite band over Metallica, or, you know, if I want to go, like how my dad brought me up on the Doors and Zeppelin. It was just something about that just, I don't know, I felt very inclusive, and not knowing, you know, yourself yet. I mean, who really knows themselves when they're in their early 20s or late teens? That's when you're still kind of, I mean, you could say you spend your entire life finding yourself. That's what my dad said when he was in his late 50s, still trying to figure it out. But there was, again, there was just something different. And when we were talking about all like we were talking about this episode, we're going to have this conversation as an episode. You mentioned one specific lyric that I don't know why it never really dawned on me, because that's how I felt a lot while listening to GNR, and that was from Estranged, right? You're talking to yourself.
Talking to myself, and nobody's home.
It's, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people can identify with. I talk to myself all the time. I still do, all the time, and that, and of course, many of Axl's lyrics spoke to me, and it's just trying to find out who I am, and it's weird how I just latched onto this man that I never met, didn't really know anything about. But again, another off-air conversation that we have it's again trying to find out who I can bond with over this. It's not just, okay, it's just me in a band. It's like it's getting involved with the fans. It's going on the forums and seeing that other people can feel like that as well.
Well, in some ways, is it that much different from? And I think this might have been the emotional and intellectual portal of the past. You know, it used to be very important to people to know which books you liked, and that people would bond through a certain book, and that would be the indicator of, okay, we've got some things in common, we can see things the same way. You know, because I think, you know, it's obviously a rite of human passage that when you get into your teens and your late teens, you go through a period of rejection where you're repudiating and rejecting the things that don't make sense to you, and you may not be able to even articulate it to yourself, but instinctively you know it's not right, or something's wrong, or you just feel that, no, this isn't for me, I don't get this. You know, when I was growing up, that was the middle class, heavy use of alcohol, the viewpoints that came out of that didn't work for me, and I went through that rite of passage that we all go through of pushing that away, and then slowly you start to build on the things that you go, yeah, this does work, you know, and that for me was music.
Here's the interesting thing, though, and to tie it again into my stupid live journal, which was all GNR'd out. I ended up meeting, this was before Tinder and Bumble and all those dating websites, you know, just people would just find you randomly online through different means back then. Somebody friended me from Canada, from Ottawa, Canada, that saw that I had a common interest of Axl Rose, and we ended up, I don't know if you air quote dating for like a few years. So, but with that, like that relationship and referring to what I said before about bonding with other fans over it, there was still something missing. Like for me, it's weird. I don't know how you are, Alan. It's like I need some sort of verification, like where the compliment is coming from. It needs to be more than just a peer for me, because I think so low of myself, or I mean, I did, or still have issues with that. So finding out about, you know, Axl, that he had issues before growing up, things that I perceived as way worse than anything I had gone through at that time, disability included, and seeing what heights he reached, and also tying that into, when we talked about this last episode with Dr. Steve and Doug, was the lack of drugs that he wasn't as much of an addict as Slash was, as Duff, as Steven. So there was just something there that, like, okay, wow, this guy who to me was He-Man, he was a character that he suffered like me, and I would always defend him. A guy I didn't know. Oh, he's an asshole, or this was again before when he was like gone for 10 years. No one really knew. But I would defend him, like, you don't know what he's going through. And I would feel like I was speaking for myself, too. You don't know what I'm going through. Why are you going to judge me? You don't know what Axl's going through.
You put your finger on something really close to the center of the matter. And it made me smile when you referred to Axl as a character, because obviously you can talk about Bill Bailey,
right,
or you can talk about W. Axl Rose, because yes, he did what almost everybody who moves to Los Angeles. I mean, the history of this is long. He reinvented himself in Los Angeles. I mean, John Wayne was marrying somebody. Marilyn Monroe was Norma Jean somebody.
Right.
And
Brando is Brandon. So I understand that. I do, like, to a degree, I do.
There's a sense of reinvention.
Right. Yeah.
And like anything else, in excess, it may not have the end results that are desired. But I think we can look at ourselves as in process, that we are, in a way, works of art and development. And I think it's fine to reinvent yourself, because another way of looking at it is just saying, I'm forming my value system. And that goes down to my personal presentation, what I agree with, what I don't agree with, how I treat other people. And you form your own value system and you stick with it. So yeah, Axl is a character who came out of a chrysalis that was once called Bill Bailey. But again, especially with levels of success, and success is a word I have a little bit of a problem with.
How do you define it? I mean, there are people who are millionaires who are miserable.
Well, I was about to say, more commonly, I've viewed success as a figment of an envious imagination. Mm-hmm. And as with everything, two sides to the story, then there's a balance in there somewhere. Because I'll also look at Axl and go, you know what, dude, you have had the most extraordinarily privileged existence in life. And I hope that you appreciate and honor and respect that to some degree, that you, as you get older, you come to terms with past baggage, present problems, so on and so forth. It's obvious from a lot of the material that was written back in the 80s that one of the things that fired up Axl's muse was conflict. And it's probably a little hard to be, an angst-ridden rock and roller in your 50s and wear that with a genuine face. But he's had an incredibly privileged life, and I hope he knows that, and I hope he appreciates that. Not everybody comes from modest backgrounds in Indiana and ends up owning an extraordinarily large house overlooking the ocean in Malibu. That's a hell of a journey, and it was made with a lot of people. A lot of people put a lot of effort into that, and it was made with 4 other members of a band too. Chemistry and energy. It's a conversation I've had with other people before too, is that I sometimes look at bands and see them as an attempt by people who have come from really dysfunctional backgrounds and families to create their perfect family. And when it's one for all and all for one, and against the odds, everybody holds together. But inevitably, if the band becomes successful, at some point, all the dysfunctional baggage that has been brought by everybody into the band gets opened up and unpacked, and your band starts to fall apart. You know, there's a kind of sad inevitability to that with a band that does do very, very well, it seems. I mean, I think we can count on one hand the super bands that actually manage to hold together.